country space assets, it's not enforceable. So because of that, it also has very limited significance in preventing any kinds of usage of weapons. The launch registration convention, again, they can just provide only the minor details of which vehicle they are using for launching, what kind of satellite it is, but they can't. Most of the countries don't give any details of what kind of satellite they're sending. They'll just specify this we are sending it for civilian applications and tests of technology like that, especially in the case of China. So some of the apart from these international conventions, we are also having UN resolutions on prevention of space weaponization. But the problem with these conventions is that these are not legally enforceable. So some of the basic flaws in the established treaties is that first is the ambiguity in defining particular terms like peaceful uses, as I told in the case of outer space treaty. What is peaceful? Defending your own assets using weapons, is it peaceful? That's also another question. Outer space, limiting weaponization, non-use of weapons in outer space. That's also another ambiguous term. What is outer space? From where it starts? They usually there are many kinds of definitions on this itself, and there is no commonly accepted definition of outer space. Like one commonly accepted one is the Kármán line, which starts according to which space starts at an altitude of 100 kilometers. But there are other definitions also. So there is an ambiguity of where space starts. That also gives them leeway to use weapons wherever they want. And space weapons. What kind of space weapons can be stopped or can be used? This also is undefined. Then overriding all of this, even when it comes to UNGA resolutions, is the main factor, the main impeding factor remains the linkage with the UN Charter. That is the right to self-defense. Countries can do anything for their self-defense. That right is given to them. So all this basically, although there are a lot of treaties which have certain provisions to limit the weaponization of space, nothing as of now has come concrete in terms of the actual prevention. So this is one of the need for the international community to go for a new kind of treaty which defines space weaponization and all other aspects related to it and tries to stop it. Coming to the evolution of the Treaty on Powers, the UNGA has, the first step, the UNGA has been passing resolutions annually since 1981 for powers, and this has been transferred also to the to CDJ since 1985. They have established an ad hoc committee to discuss these issues, how to bring about consensus when it comes to space weaponization, prevention of it, and how to build up a treaty. These kinds of negotiations have been going on since 1985 in CD Geneva. But what happened is that there are divisions within CD Geneva, like the Western group of 21, Eastern European group, and there is one group that is basically China. There are divisions among nations, and a lot of perspectives have come across this period also up to now, from 1985. Firstly, 1985, they all started to work on this kind of bringing up of treaty on powers. But what happened is that the US under Reagan was in its mode of Star Wars. There's basically in 1983 they started a strategic defense initiative through which they could deploy ballistic missiles in space, anti-ballistic missiles in space, to protect themselves from the Soviet missiles. So because of this, at that time there was a huge concern on space weaponization, and that is why basically these kind of measures came up. But by the end of the Cold War, the Western group dominated all others, as in other sectors of global issues. And they told the entire world that now the Soviet Union is gone, now there is no threat perception, and because of that, even in the case of space weaponization, there is no need for any mechanism for it. So this basically ultimately led to the stalling of this re-establishment of this ad hoc committee, which usually forms every year. and after 1994 it basically stopped. But then, with changes in US policy, this push for treaty against space weaponization also started to increase, because basically Bush administration, the Bush Jr. administration came into office the early part of the last decade, and they followed a very neoconservative approach, as all of you would know, and they tried for space weaponization. They restarted this program again, and because of this, all the other nations also wanted to counter this by bringing an international treaty for prevention of space weaponization. So this is how this initiative was revived, and this was basically being spearheaded by China and Russia since 2000. So that is how the international community responded. Now, specifically coming to the case of China, what is China's stand on space weaponization? For understanding that, we should first look into how the US, what is the US stand on space weaponization? Because as per China's threat perception, their first threat perception comes from, the main threat perception comes from the US. And because of that, we need to understand that in order to analyze how China is responding to this issue. As I already told you, in the late part of the 90s, there was a change in strategy with respect to China from the side of the US. 1996, there was this Taiwan Strait crisis in which the US gave arms to Taiwan, and this basically flared up the interstate ties between Taiwan and China. And China also tried to do a lot of military exercises and all to deter this kind of further help from US to China. Following this, the main turning point came in 1999 when the Chinese embassy was bombed in Kosovo during the Kosovo operations by India. So this basically changed the Chinese approach to the United States. Till then, China was sort of balancing its interests with respect to the US. But then after this, the China stand on the US completely went opposite. And to add fuel to the fire, now the junior administration, Bush administration came up, which is neo-conservative policy, and because of this, they also they heightened their threat perception, and based on this, they tried to again come up with the old strategic defense initiative program, and they in 2002, as a result, they withdrew from the anti-ballistic missile treaty. As a result of which, they can start now the development of new ballistic missiles, which could be used for intercepting other ballistic missiles, as well as it could possibly be used for offensive purposes also. So this basically gave threat perception again to China. As a part of this is the BMD initiatives, and especially the theater missile defense initiative which US is undertaking in Eastern Europe and Asia. Recently, this has been extended to even South Korea. But the US attempts at stalling this Paros negotiations basically has been on two major bases. First is the national security interest of the United States, and secondly on the sufficiency of existing mechanisms. They told that there are new nuclear weapon states coming up, rogue states coming up, which could use all these ballistic missiles, nuclear ballistic missiles. So we have to protect our national security. That is one reason. Second reason is for preventing this, any kind of measures, international regime coming against space weaponization, is to tell that, okay, as of now currently there are existing mechanisms are sufficient enough, and we ourselves will not be going for the offensive. We are trying all of this only for defensive purposes. So on these two stands, they are furthering their space weaponization program. So this basically has led China to rethink on its strategy on space weaponization. How basically we can classify pre-2007 and post-2007. What about the situation pre-2007? After 2002, when US withdrew from the ABM treaty and tried to go for their ballistic missile defense program. China, it has already been in the CD as well as the UNJ activities when it comes to space weaponization. It acceded to OST in the Outer West Treaty in 1983, and then it has been a member of the CD on space weaponization since 1984. But after this 2002 incident, they tried to team up with Russia, which also under Putin was not much friendly to the United States, as all of you are aware. And as a result of this nexus, they tried to bring out a lot of thematic papers into the CD. From 2002 to 2006, they have bought several working papers, and in 2005 they even hosted a meeting at Geneva on building up a treaty. What they actually wanted was to gather other nations around this cause of space weaponization so as to limit the US efforts at BMB. But then, in a surprise move, 2007, 11th of January, China tested its ASAT. Now, there are many reasons being highlighted as to why China tested this. First is pressurizing US into supporting powers. By showing its capability, China wanted US to bring US to the negotiating table and bring about a treaty on the peace weapons. That is one reason. Second is on defending its increasing space assets. From 2000, we have seen an upsurge in basically in China's space launches, the number of space assets it holds. So, in order to protect these, also China wanted ASAT capability. Then signaling the US about its growing stature in space, and also certain views are there about it being time to want Taiwan during its period of election, because they feared that in a period in which China is growing and trying to stabilize itself, Taiwan, US might help Taiwan to bring DPP back into power and follow very aggressive policies against to try to secede from China. But out of this, we can analyze in different ways. But what I feel is that pressurizing US into supporting powers is one of the main reasons for US going for the ASAT test. And as a result, you saw US testing again. It has stopped its ASAT test long back as a part of its ending its space race with the USSR. But now it came back again into the stage by testing an ASAT in 2008.
Testing was banned because of ABM treaty, which came into existence in 1972.
But after all this testing and the fears of an arms race, China again gave another surprise in the form of the Treaty on Prevention of Placement of Weapons in Outer Space, called PPW in 2008, along with Russia. Now, this treaty, for the first time, gave a sort of framework as a framework draft for the Paros Treaty. This happened for the first time, and that also after the 2007 ASAT test. So let's look at why China did this. Now, China basically needs Paros for ensuring its strategic interests. It wants to limit US missiles, US ballistic missiles, attacking its space assets as well as attacking its territory. It does not want an arms race with the United States. It has seen from the example of Soviet Union of how, with its limited economic capabilities, Soviet Union tried during the Reagan time, provoked by Reagan, to escalate its strategic program, but at the same time it failed to do so, and this ultimately caused its collapse. China does not want that. China is undergoing a period of stabilization, which it wants to continue. So in this way, we can see China's 2007 ASAT test, 2008 PPWT, all of this we can see it in one perspective. That is basically China wants a treaty in place, but at the same time, it also wants the weapons in place, because it knows that even if a treaty comes, it may or may not be in a way in which it wants it to be, because it can be reached only through countries. In the case a treaty doesn't come at all, China needs to protect its interests. For that, it needs space weapons and ASATs. Recently, there has been an incident in which Xinjiang satellites, that is basically what they defined as technology testing satellites. That is just the definition which they gave to the international community. These satellites, basically, they met each other in orbit. It is a very difficult maneuvering to cause two satellites to meet each other, because they are going at very different speeds, very high speeds. It's a very difficult task, but they tried to do it. And one of the reasons which some Western observers have been given is that they might be used to test certain capabilities which could be used to conduct proximity operations on other satellites, other US satellites or Western satellites, whatever it be. The US, for example, has already worked on that direction. In 2008, they have launched this experimental satellite system, which is also used for going close to other satellites and doing some proximity reconnaissance operations, and who knows, even placing weapons. So this basically shows that China follows a two-pronged approach. One which is based on developing weapons, and at the same time also working for a treaty. So this brings us to the challenges for India. What if a treaty comes across? It will be coming as a second part of the NPT. They might say that countries which tested before, like only up to 2007, might be in that exclusive club. Other countries will not be able to test again. India will be losing out on that. So, in this context, what can be India's possible response? Should it go and push for a treaty, or should it go for a test, or should it do both? There is one question which should be answered. According to me, we should also try to do the same approach which is used by China, a two-pronged approach. That is basically, we have the capability from the scientists which have asked, they have been confident about India having ASAT capability. It's only the matter of testing. And testing itself is very difficult, because a lot of international opposition might come, because already a lot of opposition has come for China for testing its ASAT because of the many debris it has generated. And India having a sort of responsible image in international system, unlike China, it will be very hard to break that mold. So I would like to finish this presentation, and thank you all for